It's just insane. It's getting to the point when I come to this studio at night to do this hour podcast, I usually show up relatively sane, about as sane as I will ever be. Sometimes I show up down here in a bad mood, sometimes a good mood, sometimes a neutral mood. Doesn't really make any difference. But I'll sit down and I'll go to my computer and look at the topics that I have sent to my file for discussion, possible discussion that night, 90% of which I never get to. And I'll print them off and I'll start going through them. And I feel anger or frustration or sadness, whatever, start to build. Because I read this shit, just like these Christian fuckers who are praying for God, for their toy fucking God, to intervene, to push people into the fucking abyss. You dirty bastards, you. So I'll read something like that, and I'll think, calm down. It's all make-believe. But then I realize it's not make-believe. Because these fucking Christians have inordinate power, even though they're always talking about, oh, we're being persecuted. They have unbelievable power in the government of the United States and in all the agencies and the military and the Supreme Court. But we're being persecuted. Oh, we have to bake fucking cakes for fucking queers? Oh, no. And I'm reading this stuff, and I can feel it. I can feel it start building, the rage, just pure rage. And the rage is genuine, legitimate, because I come from the inside, not the outside. I can't talk about Islam like this because I wasn't brought up in that faith. I can't talk about Hinduism this way because I wasn't brought. I can't talk about Judaism because I wasn't. But I was brought up in the Christian faith. I was. Back in the day when it was still insane, they still, 70 years ago, it was still, well, there's heaven and then there's hell. And you want to live the kind of life so you go to the heaven place, because if you go to the hell place, it's torture for fucking eternity, motherfucker. Eternity. How long's eternity? For fucking ever. What? You mean if I lie, I'll go to hell forever? Yes! Woo! That's some strong shit. So that was crazy. But the way I saw Christianity in the living world, as they say, I had the example of my grandparents. Now, my grandpa wasn't all that into it. He would go to church on prayer meeting night and twice on Sunday, but he really wasn't into it. I used to watch my old Italian immigrant grandfather. He'd bow his head in church and he'd put his little envelope in with his tithe and all this shit, but he really wasn't into it. But my grandma, ooh, shit, was she into it or what? I mean, she really was. And the way she evidenced her Christian faith, she didn't talk about gay people. She didn't talk about the Jews, even though at the time the Christians were still blaming the Jews for the murder of their Messiah. Fuck! She didn't talk about that. She belonged to an organization inside the Baptist church where she was a member that took care of poor people. Now, by take care, I don't mean they invited them into her house or other members of the circle. But they would, circle as in Wicca, but what they would do, they would collect food and clothing and toiletries, such as they were back in the day. Toilet paper back then was pretty rough, you know what I mean? But they would gather all this stuff together, and they would go to the rescue mission. That's what it was called, the rescue mission. Now, the rescue mission back then was full of drunks, and people who'd been thrown out of their homes because they couldn't pay the bills anymore, divorced people. They had the male section, the female section. And my grandma and her lady friends would go in, and they would take bushel baskets. You all remember bushel baskets? Huh? Bushel baskets full of shit. Good stuff. And they would take it in. The other thing that impressed me about my grandma when I was a kid growing up about Christianity was they would visit people who were sick. Some of them were dying. And this is back in the day when people didn't go to a hospital necessarily. They stayed in their homes and died. And the doctor would come and visit. And my grandma and her members of her women's circle, Christians all, would go visit these folks. And they would sit with them and hold the dying person's hand and pray very gentle prayers and talk to the dying person and bring them little gifts, like maybe a little box of strawberries from the garden or some well water or, just little gifts like that and sit around and talk. My grandma used to take me along. And hence my first person account of all this stuff. I would watch it. I didn't know dying people, what the fuck do you care when you're 4 years old? But I knew they were sick and they were lying in bed, and my grandma would be sitting next to the bed, holding a hand, stroking a brow, offering up a prayer, fanning the dying person. Those fans in the church that had the funeral parlor on, advertising, fanning people, being nice to them, taking care of them. And then after the visit, they would offer one last word of prayer, quiet prayer. Not praying that the queers all fucking go to hell. Not praying that, oh God, bring an intervention. Stop these goddamn queers. Not that. They didn't even do that in their church. But a gentle prayer. And then we would leave. And a week later, if the person was still alive, Grandma would go back with her circle of ladies and me, if I was there, and they'd do it all over again. And they would keep fucking doing it to bring solace and comfort and spirituality to the person dying. Now, I know it was all bullshit, but it was gentle, and it was kind, and it was quiet, and it was inclusive. And it was healing. You can be healed even as you're dying. You get that, I'm sure. What the fuck happened to that? These Christian evangelical jacklegs, insane fucking queer-hating, Jew-hating sons of bitches took over. And look what has happened. Grandma, wherever you are, Grandma, this is what happened to your Christianity. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. As you know, we've switched formats and are now broadcast exclusively on the Progressive Voices Network. So that means you get fewer program interruptions, no corporate commercials, and lots of profanity. But our format change also means some of our radio listeners no longer hear the program. It's been a while since I mentioned our podcasts, so you may have forgotten that there is a way to listen to this program anytime you need a good dose of screaming. Visit MikeMalloy.com and subscribe to our podcasts. You have your choice. You can listen to the ranting with the audio podcast or listen and watch me lose control with a video podcast subscription. As a podcast subscriber, you can download the program to your mobile device and take me with you wherever you go. And if you have a friend who needs a dose of truth-seeking, you can give a gift subscription as well. That's MikeMalloy.com, and never miss a minute of the uncensored fun and frivolity.